Okay, good morning everyone, and oh yeah, I do need the clicker, don't I? Thanks for having us along. It's great to be here. We planned this event for, well, this one's been nearly 2 years in the planning, I think, since Birdship contacted us and said, we've heard about this WeedSmart Week, we want to come to our region in a couple of years, and here we are. So great working with Birdship, and thanks for having us along. What we're about today, over these next 3 days, is solutions. So we're not going to be spending lots of time sharing lots of research data with you. We love research and we love research data, but we are solutions focused. And we're solutions focused for obviously managing herbicide resistant weeds. And so today and the next couple of days, you'll be hearing from lots of farmers and agronomists really specifically about those solutions and things that the farmers can take home straight away, and obviously the agronomists as well. So, yeah, that's what I'd like to kick off with this morning, is really just talking a little bit about those solutions. And for us, it's the WeedSmart Big Six. I'm from Geraldton in Western Australia. I started out my career in the early 90s, and by the late 90s, we had a big herbicide resistance problem on our hands. We had the lupin wheat rotation, lupin wheat, 30 years in a row, ryegrass and radish, out of control. At the end of the 90s, our farmers thought, where is this going? I'm going to be out of cropping in 5 years' time. I'm going to have to go back to sheep. We've got sandy soils. They didn't want to go back to livestock. What are we going to do? And they got stuck into it, and they got aggressive using combination of herbicide and non-herbicide tools. And now, if you walk around those farms, the sheep are all gone. It's continuous crop wall to wall, and it's very rare to walk into a crop with any weeds at all, to be perfectly honest. They really have got on top of the problem through being aggressive and using a diverse range of tactics. So that's where I come from, my history, and that's why I'm standing in front of you today. I was involved in all of that communication through the years and working with those farmers, and just amazing to see them come out the other end of it. Now, some of you might be out the other end of it already. You might have already had a win on your farm, and many of you, you're probably here because you're thinking, I've got a problem and I've got to do something about it. And so I guess what I'm telling you that story for is there's hope. So, and I think the northern region of Western Australia is a really good example of how much hope there is. I never thought we'd walk into a crop without ryegrass or radish in this era, but certainly that's what we're doing. And it's not all herbicides. But what I want to talk a bit about today is I don't want to call it scare tactics, but I do want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing in herbicide resistance, because we've got a suite of new herbicides coming out in the next 2 or 3 years. It's fantastic. It's like the 90s all over again. If you were around in the 90s, you would have remembered seeing all of these herbicide launches, one after another, brand new product, year after year. And it's happening again now. The chemical companies are rolling out lots of new herbicides. To my counting, I think there's 8, maybe 9 new products coming on the market in the next 3 years. I think 5 of them are ryegrass, have ryegrass activity, and there's some that have both broadleaf and ryegrass and grass activity. Some of those 5 ryegrass products control a range of other grasses as well, and we've got about 4 or 5 wild radish products coming as well. So you could be sitting there thinking, well, what are we worried about? We've got 5 new herbicides. Some of them are new groups. We haven't even seen those groups before, and so why are we sitting here? Shouldn't we just be thinking, we've got new herbicides coming, we'll just use those? So what I'm going to do is not try and scare you, but try and tell you where we're coming from with the research information that we have as to why it is really important to use diversity and use the WeedSmart Big Six. So let's just tell a bit of a story for the next 5 minutes or so about why we really think it's still important, and it's not just about the new herbicides. As much as I love them, nothing against the chemical companies for bringing them out. Let's just talk a bit about it. So this is Roberto Buzzi. He's our Italian researcher at ARI, colourful character, lots of fun, amazing runner until he fell off his motorbike recently, but does a lot of research on the herbicides and herbicide resistance. And I'm telling a bit of an old story here, but what he did, and this was several years ago now, it was before Sakura was even released to farmers in Australia. Bayer gave Roberto some Sakura and he broke it before it was even released to farmers. So what he did was he took Sakura, this here, there's only a small dot there, but this is the normal dose response curve for Sakura on susceptible ryegrass. What he did was he applied this rate here, where he got about 50% control, and he took the survivors of that rate and made them cross-pollinate with one another. That's what we call an arranged marriage in the technical terms. Made them cross-pollinate with one another. It's called recurrent selection, and then selected them with Sakura for 3 more years in a row. Every year, taking the survivors, making them cross-pollinate with one another. And what he did was he evolved resistance, some level of resistance to Sakura in the lab. So this is the label rate of Sakura around about here, and as you can see, after 4 recurrent selections, he has 80% survival to the label rate. And so that was pretty alarming, but the more alarming thing was that he then tested those ryegrass to other herbicides, Boxer Gold and Avidex, and found that it was cross-resistant to them as well. And so this is the whole point. It's this metabolic cross-resistance that is the big concern. So while we have new herbicides coming out, the scary thing is that we may have resistance to some of them before we even get them. Now, we may not too. Some of these herbicides might have no resistance, and they might have no resistance for quite a long time. So that's why it's really important to treat these new herbicides with respect. Some of them might already have a level of resistance in the field, or some of them we might not get that sort of 8 or 10 shots that we might have got out of a trifluralin or a Sakura or something like that. So let's have a look at some data. There's lots of numbers on this slide, but this is from Peter Boutsalis, and this is the term alphabet cross-resistance. This is southeast of South Australia from his random survey. I think it was sampled in 2015 or 16, I can't remember, but so it's a few years old. And so if we look in the columns here, this is all different paddocks. Every one of these is a different paddock, and this is the level of resistance. So trifluralin resistance, 69% survival in this population, 22 in that population. Avidex resistance, Boxer Gold, Arcade, Sakura, less resistance. Propizamide, no resistance, and butazan, quite a bit of resistance. Now, I guess the alarming thing here is that just haven't seen enough Boxer Gold and Sakura in these paddocks for the resistance to evolve from applying those herbicides. So it's all those years of applying the herbicides that we've been using which has evolved cross-resistance to some of our other herbicides. So there's some good news there. There's a product like propizamide, Curb, as it says up there, and Roberto has found it always kills everything. He has not found any resistance. There's no resistance internationally. There's possibly a resistant population from the Eyre Peninsula, but not confirmed yet. There's resistance to wintergrass on golf courses and so on, but no resistance in ryegrass. So are some of our new herbicides going to be like propizamide, where wonderful new herbicide, bring it out, no resistance to any of these nasty populations? Or is it going to be like butazan? New herbicide comes out and there's already resistance to it. So that's the whole point. So the point is that we have new herbicides coming. We already have a lot of resistance in Australia. Sometimes we get to test them before they come out. Roberto's been working with some of these new herbicides already, and I won't tell you which products, but he has found some resistance to some of the new herbicides already from the field. So the point being is that we do need to stick with this message, with this approach of using a diverse range of tools, and hence the WeedSmart Big 6. So what I'm going to do from now on, I'll talk about testing in a minute, is talk a little bit about the WeedSmart Big 6. Everything you're going to hear over all today has been designed around this WeedSmart Big 6, and everything you're going to see over the next couple of days is about the Big 6. Now, the Big 6 isn't an exhaustive list. It's not the only things that you can do, but we as a group sort of worked out that there's these herbicide and non-herbicide tools at different times during the growing season where we can intervene on weeds. Back in the day when we had herbicides all working, we could just use a pre-em and then a post-em and then shut the gate, couldn't we? There's 2 times, a knockdown and pre-em, maybe a post-em, all done. Whereas with the big 6, we're talking about the knockdown, the pre-em, the early post, the crop competition, the stopping seed set, the harvest weed seed control, and probably before all of that, the crop rotation and pasture rotation. So it's a reflection, the big 6 is a reflection of herbicide and non-herbicide and 6 different times of intervening against our weeds. We also, you'll see in the big 6, we have some WeedSmart wisdom. It used to be a WeedSmart 10-point plan, and we changed it to the big 6 to really focus on those big ones, but also very important to also keep considering some of these other things like clean seed, not cutting the rate, spray application, clean borders, and herbicide resistance testing. So I'll just quickly set the scene now, going through the big 6, and then you'll hear from speakers for the next few days all about the big 6. So, number 1, rotate crops and pastures. So, seems obvious, but we can get sort of locked into just profitable rotations in this, I don't know if it's this part of the world, but canola wheat gets bagged a fair bit for being an unsustainable rotation, doesn't it? It's 2 crops just rotated year after year, or even continuous cereal in some situations. Whereas if we can have diverse rotations and even triple break crops, or double or triple break crops, that's the Rolls Royce. So here's an example of a triple break of a hay, a bean and a canola. So rotating crops and pastures is number 1. Number 2 is the double knock. Glyphosate's such a big deal that it gets its own member of the big 6. So preserving glyphosate, the double knock is all about preserving glyphosate. The standard double knock that you'd be aware of is the glyphosate followed by paraquat. Very good practice when you get the opportunity. Obviously, just rotating to paraquat is the other good tool to use. But you know, it doesn't all have to be about herbicide either. This is the weed chipper. So this could be used particularly in summer fallow or long winter fallow situations. Got a particular fit in the north of Australia, but our Western Australian growers were pretty excited about it too. So what it is it's weed at cameras, looking for green weeds and then firing a quick response time to chip the weeds out. So the double knock doesn't have to be 2 chemicals in a row. It can be herbicide followed by cultivation. Obviously, broad, whole paddock cultivation is probably not where we're trying to go back to. So bringing in an idea like the weed chipper is giving us potentially a double knock, but without cultivating the whole paddock. So mix and rotate herbicides is number 3 of the big 6. Got Keith Richards up there because we want our herbicides to live hard and die old like Keith. He's not dead yet, but maybe he never will die actually. He's outlived David Bowie and Prince and a range of other people. How do you live hard and die old? So what we're talking about there is mixing and rotating herbicides. So we used to talk a lot about just rotating herbicides. You used a herbicide last year, don't use it next year. Well, now we talk more about mix and rotate. Mix 2 herbicides last year, mix 2 different herbicides this year. And why? Well, a lot of reasons, but the saying goes is that rotating buys you time, but mixing buys you shots. So rotating from one herbicide to the next just gives you more years over which you use the shots of herbicide, whereas mixing 2 products together can give you extra shots, simply because if we have a plant there that's resistant to one of the herbicides and the other herbicide kills it, it never sets seed, and so we get a free shot. And so the saying, once again, was Pat Trannell that developed it. He said, this is an American researcher, rotating buys you time, but mixing buys you shots. Well, I would say mix and rotate buys you time and shots. So we're going to hear about the mix and rotate, and it also, can get expensive. And when your agronomist is telling you to mix 2 pre-ems together and you're thinking, this guy's just trying to sell me more herbicide, well, no, it's coming from us as well, that it's not just about herbicide sales, it is good resistance management strategy. Crop competition, something I'm extremely passionate about and excited about, and something that we can do a lot better. It's number 4 of the big 6. It's a non-herbicide tool. It works on all weeds. Nothing escapes crop competition. You can reduce the yield loss from the weed competition. So it works 2 ways. So crop competition, if you have a competitive crop, you lose less yield from the weeds, but also it improves herbicides and it suppresses the weed seed set, and it improves harvest weed seed control. So crop competition is just such a powerful tool that can be applied to your entire farm and works on all of your weeds. So, yeah, we'll be hearing a fair bit about crop competition as well. I'll get through this a bit quickly now. Number 5, stopping seed set. You've had the weeds escape. It's pre-harvest. Can you stop seed set? And, obviously crop topping, hay cutting, that sort of thing is our stopping seed set options. And number 6, one that we talk a lot about with WeedSmart and ARI, is harvest weed seed control. We've got 6 tools. I think we could say 7 now. There's another mill on the market. We're going to spend some time talking about harvest weed seed control. We've got a panel today, and tomorrow we've got all the harvesters coming into the shed and some of the different tools to have a look at. So there are 6 tools at a range of costs, a range of difficulty, I guess, but we're the world leaders in Australia of harvest weed seed control. We're very proud of that, and ARI and WeedSmart and the Australian farmers should be very proud too, because they're pretty much all developed by Australian farmers. And so harvest weed seed control is that final knockout punch to the weeds right at the end of the season. So that, in a nutshell, is the big 6. My job this morning was just to not scare the pants off you, but tell you a little bit about why we're here in the face of alphabet cross resistance to a range of herbicides, and why we need to use this big 6. And then the speakers coming after me for the next few days, and some of the panel discussions we're going to have, is going to tell some stories from farmers and agronomists and practical information about this big 6. So with that, I will finish up and say that this week it's great to be here. It's all about solutions, and it's all about, for us, promoting the big 6. Thank you.